Hello friends, myself Dr. Nidhi Darbari on My Education Treasure, and today I am going to explain about epistemology, meaning, possibilities and its educational implications. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy concerned with the nature, origin, structure, methods, sources, validity, limits, scope, and integrity of human knowledge and is also referred to as theory of knowledge. It attempts to answer the basic question: what distinguishes true, adequate knowledge from false, inadequate knowledge? When we look at the history of epistemology, we can discern a clear trend in spite of the confusion of many seemingly contradictory positions. The first theories of knowledge stressed its absolute permanent character, whereas the later theories put the emphasis on its relativity or situation dependence, its continuous development or evolution, and its active interference with the world and its subjects and objects. The whole trend moves from a static, passive view of knowledge towards a more and more adaptive and active one. Consider the degree of statement: the earth is round. Thus, its truth depends upon the context in which the statement is uttered. For example, the statement can be successfully more accurately translated as the earth is spherical, the earth is an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles. Etymologically, the word epistemology has been derived from the two Greek words epistome, meaning knowledge, understanding, and logos, meaning study of. It seeks to answer the basic question: what is true and how do we know? Epistemology covers two areas: the content of thought and thought itself. In educational terms, curriculum and instruction, or content and method. Epistemology seeks to answer a number of fundamental issues. One is whether reality can ever be known. Skepticism, in its narrow sense, is the position claiming that people cannot acquire reliable knowledge and that any search for truth is in vain. A second issue foundational to epistemology is whether all truth is relative or whether some truths are absolute. Is all truth subject to change? Is it possible that what is true today may be false tomorrow? If the answer is yes to the previous question, such truths are relative. If, however, there is absolute truth, such truth is eternally and universally true, irrespective of time or place. If absolute truth exists in the universe, then educators would certainly want to discover it and make it the core of the school curriculum. Closely related to the issue of relativity and absoluteness of truth are the question whether knowledge is subjective or objective, and whether there is truth that is independent of human experience. Epistemology is the study of our method of acquiring knowledge. It answers the question: how do we know? It encompasses the nature of concept, the constructing a concept, the validity of the senses, logical reasoning, as well as thoughts, ideas, memories, emotions, and all things mental. It is concerned with how our minds are related to reality and whether these relationships are valid or invalid. Epistemology is the explanation of how we think. It is required in order to be able to determine the true from false by determining a proper method of evaluation. It is needed in order to use and obtain knowledge of the world around us. Without epistemology, we could not think. More specifically, we would have no reason to believe but our thinking was productive or correct, as opposed to random images flashing before our minds. With an incorrect epistemology, we would not be able to distinguish truth from error. The consequences are obvious. The degree to which our epistemology is correct is the degree to which we could understand reality and the degree to which we could use that knowledge to promote our lives and goals. Flaws in epistemology will make it harder to accomplish anything. Epistemology seeks answer to a number of fundamental issues like what is knowledge, what is the origin of knowledge, what is the nature and structure of knowledge, what are the theories of knowledge, what are the basis of knowledge, what are the sources of knowledge, what are the methods of acquiring knowledge, what is the validity of knowledge, what are the limits of knowledge, how is knowledge acquired, what are the necessary and sufficient conditions to knowledge, what makes justified belief justified, how to understand the concept of justification. Is justification internal or external to one's own minds? Possibilities of knowledge. Philosophers have taken four main positions and possibilities of knowledge. Agnosticism. A term closely related to skepticism is agnosticism. Agnosticism is a profession of ignorance in reference to the existence or non-existence of God. Most people claim that reality can be known. However, once they have taken that position, they must decide through what sources reality may be known and must have some concept of how to judge the validity of their knowledge. Agnostic philosophers who take extreme negative view and say that conclusive knowledge of ultimate reality is impossibility. The philosophers who have heralded the agnostic movement in Europe was David Hume. He wanted philosophy to be actualistic in its emphasis. Hume was followed by Auguste Comte. He emphasized man's concerns with control of nature rather than with its causes. Then J.S. Mill, with his rejection of a thing in itself and acceptance of the stand that knowledge refers only to phenomena, added yet another chapter to agnostic thinking in philosophy. But it was Herbert Spencer who, by making fundamental division between religion and science, became the true interpreter of evolution. He claimed that all our knowledge was only symbolic and applied to the relative and conditional. However, the term agnosticism was coined much later by Huxley. The term means not being able to know. According to Huxley, as there is no experimental evidence with respect to the nature of God and immortality, our knowledge should not include the supernatural. Skepticism, a somewhat less extreme view as to the possibilities of knowledge, is taken by skeptics. They have a questioning attitude toward the possibility of having knowledge. The philosophy of skepticism originated in Greece much before the dawn of the Christian era and implied not merely doubt, but, as Russell puts it, dogmatic doubt. That thought was well expressed by Gorgias, the Greek sophist, who asserted that nothing exists and that if it did, we could not know it. A full-blown skepticism would make intelligent action impossible. The early Greek thinking is contained in Protagoras' formula "no more" and is elaborated by Metrodorus was when he says that none of us knows. Not these trends in thinking lay the foundation of skepticism. Various philosophies have continued with some elements of skepticism in them. The dogmatic religion have tended to overshadow skepticism as a philosophy. Perhaps it is left to David Hume, also an agnostic philosopher, to reassert skepticism as a philosophy. In treatise on human nature, it dwells upon the uncertainty of knowledge. According to him, knowledge is derived from empirical data by inferences, but as it is not demonstrative, it is uncertain. Affirmation of knowledge. The third area of study in the possibilities of knowledge has been called the affirmation of knowledge. The position briefly is that true knowledge of ultimate reality is possible. The idealists believe in such a possibility. Their belief is related to metaphysical position. As there is an ultimate reality, it is possible to know it. Plato through the allegory of the cave, Descartes by his idea of the self being the most immediate reality, spins in the doctrine of the substance, Berkeley through his to be is to be perceived, Kant through his sensibility and understanding, and the Get by his concept of the absolute mind have all tried to convey the possibilities of knowing reality. Experimentalism. The fourth position is taken by the experimentalist. They believe that knowledge is always fractional, never total, and that it functions in a present field or situation where it is needed, and that we can appropriate such fractional and functional knowledge. Philosophers like John Dewey emphasize the experimental attitude, which substitutes detailed analysis for wholesome assertions, specific inquiries, small facts for opinions. Epistemology and education. Epistemology and education are tacit companions since both are primarily the act of knowing. Epistemology is the motor of education in a sense because it drives the educational process. Whatever educational theories and practices one employs will be consistent with his or her theories and practices of epistemology. Epistemology has direct impact upon education on a moment by moment basis. For example, assumptions about the importance of various sources of knowledge will certainly be reflected in curricular emphasis and teaching methodologies. Because Christian teachers believe in revelation as a source of valid knowledge, they will undoubtedly choose a curriculum and a role for Bible in that curriculum that differs substantially from the curricular choices of non-believers. In fact, the philosophic worldview of their faith will shape the presentation of every topic they teach. That, of course, is true for teachers from every philosophical persuasions and thus constitutes an important argument for educating Adventist youth in Adventist schools. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video and don't forget to subscribe.